Welcome to the Thinking Out Loud podcast. I'm Dr. Dave Hayes, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Feng Sun. And Feng got her PhD from University of Alabama, joined Troy in 2008, and really glad to have her on today. Hello, Feng.
Hey, hello, Dr. Dave.
And tell us something about yourself.
I originally came from China, and I became an international student at University of Alabama since 2003. And I studied my political science at University of Alabama for 5 years. Well, the interesting is that I did not know that University of Alabama is a school with such a good football team, unless I left there. Because at that time period going on, and there was a ban from attending some national championship at that time. But when I left in 2008, they began to hire the brilliant coach, and the football team began to work really good. So roll tide.
There you go. So it is. I always joke when people ask me about any sport except hockey. I'm usually like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't follow hockey." So I'm kind of anti. But so you really like the football? So that's cool.
Well, I like being in a school that with a really such number one football team, at the country.
Yeah. And Troy punches above its weight. We got to say about our football team. So So we're going to talk today I'm trying to focus these things on research. I'm trying to focus these things on research. We have some, we're going to talk about a paper you're writing with Dr. Zhang from, what university is your colleague from?
Institution of Technology at Florida.
And the paper is entitled "Why There Has Been No Student Movement on College Campuses in China for 3 Decades, a survey study of 35 universities, 2015 to 2018, and its implications." And so we have interesting, you guys have really done a lot of work to, doing a survey at these schools. And the thing I find interesting, before I let you tell us all about what you're doing here in your own words, one thing I really like about this paper is you're interested in why there isn't a student movement. So that's your broader. In order to answer that, you're looking at the students, right? Why, the motivations or lack thereof of students to have a student movement. And it's a great example of the difference between the question you're interested in, and this is something that comes up with students all the time when they're doing capstone. There's a question you're interested in that, and then you can't necessarily get directly at that, but you can get at some aspect of it, looking at facts and information and data. And you guys do that by looking at student attitudes. So I think it's a great example of that difference between the broader question and the factual empirical question that's in there. So now that I've gone on about why I think it's cool, you tell me in your own words, what was on your mind and what you're doing here in this paper.
Yeah, well, you can see that when we ask the question why there is activism in the past 3 decades, this is a very broad question, as you said, and we try to specify it. So by looking at students' attitudes towards government, governance, democracy, and the future of China. So we actually specify the broader question into some specific aspects by checking all these survey questions. And the reason we want to study the attitudes of students is because the Chinese college students have had a long history of leading social movement in modern China. So if you look at the early communist leaders like Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and Deng Xiaoping, they all started their political career as leaders of student movement in the early 20th century. So Chinese college students, they actually movement in the early 20th century. So Chinese college students, they actually, their movement is an important indicator of government performance and social stability in China. So that's the reason why we try to study. There is no any movement since the 1989 that movement we're familiar with, the Tiananmen Square movement, this pro-democracy movement, and after that, there's a period of tranquility in the past 3 decades. So the question is why? Okay, we really want to figure out what's going on.
Now you're looking at one aspect. There are, I've been scanning through your paper. There are three hypotheses or causes you think behind this. One of them is the students. And what are the other two?
We look at the students towards democracy and their attitudes towards the future of China.
Right, and that's what you're looking at here. But kind of background there, you in the paper, I believe, talk about there being three hypotheses of why there haven't been student movements, right? That there was government control in the
Yeah, yes. Oh, yeah. That's what talking about. That one possible is that there's a strict government control since 1989, the student movement.
Yeah.
The secondly is that it's possible that the students really satisfy as a part of the general population. They're satisfied with the economic performance and the governance during that time period. World survey is doing from 2015 to 2018. And the third possible hypothesis is the combination of these two. So
the combination of the two.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because you can't just say there's only one factor cause one thing. This is a social phenomenon. There's a
Right.
multiple factors could impact on the student attitudes.
I was just in there. I was like, "What's the third one?" It's combination. Now that makes sense. And so I think it's really interesting. So you're looking at the attitudes, and so what did you find? I mean, did you find what you expected to find, or were you surprised by anything? What do you think are the real findings here?
Well, there actually are most of the findings consistent with our hypothesis, like what we think, based on our knowledgeable guess. So what we think that first of all that the students they are really satisfied with the economic performance of Chinese government. So you can see all the survey question asked them that if they confident with the Chinese economy will surpass that of the United States, and most of the students say yes, they believe so. Okay. And they all ask if you think China will be safe in the future 5 or 10 years, and still most of, like about 60 or 65% of the students, they are really confident, say that they believe that the China's future is safe. Well, again, I want to make sure that everybody knows this is a survey before 2019. So everything they may change now because of the tension escalated between China and the United States, and also the COVID-19, these kind of impact. So we're talking about what they think between that time period. So this is the one finding that consistent with our hypothesis. There's another one. Let me see. There's another thing that also consistent with our previous research about the public, the general public, their attitudes toward the government is that the most important government function, the student think, is very consistent with the attitudes of the general public of China, that they think that raising the standard of living of the people is most important function, and also maintain the political stability is most important thing for China. So this is a very consistent. What surprised me is that I do find, so this is the surprise part, that although a lot of students, they are satisfied with the economic performance, they prefer, improving living standard, they prefer political stability, for political stability than democratization, but we still have a significant, small but significant percentage of students, like 10 to 12% of students, very consistent that they said that they want democratization unconditionally. So they don't care about the price could pay for democratization. Because when Soviet Union collapses, when Russia became temporarily became a democratic country, well, what Chinese people see is that the economy get really hit hard. Okay, so this is always the lesson that the Chinese Communist Party want to show to the people that see that is the price you're gonna pay. So to our surprise, we see that we do have like about 10 to 12%. Those type of people, students, you have like about 10 to 12%. Those type of people, students, that they don't care about the price they're going to pay. They want to have democratization. They want to have rule of law. So this is also shed some light to the possibility that there is a possible that we can see China still have the chance to have a future, in the future, they could have another movement that pro-democracy. So this is what we find interesting.
Yeah, and I think that a couple things that really you did mention the percentage that thought the primary role of the government was to provide a higher living standard. It was like 59%, and in that graph, there's 59%, and then I think the largest other percentage was 24%. So nothing. So that one is very clearly a dominant view that the primary function of the government is to provide a standard of living. With a quarter, though, a quarter of the folks there saying that they thought that democracy and rule of law was important. And then you did talk about, hey, in the future, what would you like to see? And you had that small percentage that are willing to support democracy, even if it
whatsoever. Yeah, that's one surprises. So
I found I was interested in your figure 7, in which of the following two societies will you choose to live? A society that has a higher standard of living, higher income, but the government is authoritarian. So you're basically, there's one point of view, and then a society that has a lower standard of living, lower income, but the government is democratic and proper, and lower income, but the government is democratic and proper. And put that way, you basically had a split decision. Yes. 51% to 49%, which has got to be within your stand.
Yeah, I know you're gonna go to discussion, so that's already on my screen. Figure 7.
Yeah, and which is interesting, and which sounds reasonable, but so it looks like there is a mix of views out there.
Yeah, the reason I didn't talk using this data is, first of all, this figure should be evaluated along with the previous question, asking people what, if they choose democracy, if there is a price. So this is a two question should put together to evaluate. And then secondly, generally, the public in the public in China still believe democracy is a good thing. So they regard democracy as a positive word. And so when you ask them if they prefer democracy, they would tend to agree to support democracy. And secondly, when they define democracy, they may define it differently, because Chinese government, the CCP government, also say they are trying to build a democratic country. So see, that's the problem here, that this question is interesting, but not that strong to indicator that we have 50% of the people that really want to favor, in favor of democracy. We have to really be careful when we evaluate the result of this question.
Well, and one thing, I mean, you've worked with this a lot longer, but that question too is the whole place is going to go to hell like these other countries have.
Wow.
That, you know, and so I could see the response to this being more mixed than, because I think you know, there's definitely bigger fall offs into oblivion and instability that are on people's minds. I'm thinking, and this kind of gave you a not so bad, you know, democracy, little less. It's not so bad, you know. That just on the face of it seems to me there. You know, the question I have that you know, you're seeing that a very strong support for basically what I'm presuming is the government line, or is certainly the implicit one. Hey, high standard of living, stability, you know, go with us. If you're the CCP, like, go with us and things are going to be better. And it seems like the college students are on board with that. My question is, when you have a student movement, what does when you actually have one, what percentage has to be on board with the social movement's goals, you know, because it probably isn't, you know, not everybody, right, is pushing for the, you know, one assumes that student movements have been driven by activists. And so my question is, you know, what percentage does it take to get a movement going? Probably more than the split decision, but I can't think there's any way you'd know this or be able to figure it out from past movements. But, you know, but my question is, what does it look like? What do we need to see for a movement to occur in terms of a split in decision or a preponderance of, I guess, anti-government split in decision, or a preponderance of, I guess, anti-government attitude?
I think that depends a lot of things. It's not just like, you know, well, a percentage of students, like as I say, 10% to 12%. These are the possible future activists because they want democracy, right? But again, you need followers. And we do have, like, our survey find that we do have, there is a significant, about like, you know, 50 to 60% of students, they want democracy, but they don't want the price following democracy. So that is the thing that depends. And you also need a trigger. Like, you know, in the 1989 movement, the trigger is corruption. So students are so feared about the corruption, you know, corrupted government at that time period. When we have this activist, the percentage of the people there, that's good. They are the future leaders of student movement. But we also need the environment to assure that the rest of the, you know, the followers, that they won't lose their job, they won't lose their house because of democratization. It seems that they are very pragmatic, or you say rational, that they won't sacrifice the life they have, the living standard they have, to seeking for democracy, at least for now. They want to make sure they have. So this is kind of like, go back to, I always told my students, this is like a Maslow theory, that when you still at the lower level, to still seeking for shelter, the basic, you know, living materials, you're not that, you know, anxious about materials. You're not that, you know, anxious about the political rights, the human rights, because you still try to feed yourself, to try to make yourself make a living of yourself. So at that time moment, you still not think that high about all those rights you should enjoy. They still try to make sure the living rights, you know, the rights of survive is the most important thing for them. I think China is like between that and the high living, you know, high level of, you know, in the Maslow theory. So they have economic development, but they still have a large percentage of population that's still in poverty or in a low living standard.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, when I look at China and and I see it through the theoretical lens. I have a lot of this selectorate theory stuff in my head, and China has done a very good job of expanding membership in the Communist Party, and and I gotta wonder what percentage of these students being interviewed are likely to, that they might see that their future is, hey, I'm going to have a job, and I'm likely to be a member of the party, because it's a huge portion of the population that's a member of the party, right? And relative to other authoritarian regimes. And so, a lot of them, I think, can have, their goals in life, whatever they want to achieve, they probably see the party as being open to them and allowing them to, materially and achieve those things. Very different than Russia, where they've created this kind of, Anders Asland has talked about this, that they've created it's kind of a cronyism, and there's no way into that, right? If you were a Russian college student, unless you're going to marry one of the people that's in this circle, how do you can't get into an aristocracy. But the party, I could become a member of the party if I want, and that probably puts a very different cast on things, and when they think about the government, and I think that's something that probably shapes their view a bit, that they have a lot of opportunities ahead of them.
Well, as far as I know, because we did research about that to check the percentage of the communist members, as a student members. To be honest, I don't think the number is very high. The percentage of communist member in the student population is really low. It's not that high, and I don't think they develop a lot of student Communist Party members at that stage. And secondly, especially after the economic reform, especially after the 1990, the large-scale privatization, the party membership is not that attractive to students, because a lot of private company or foreign direct investment, those multinational companies, that attracted a lot of talented students, to work there. Good. Those, they don't want, call it communist party membership. The only students that they're willing to become the party member are those students they have this go to work in the government, to become the party member are those students they have this go to work in the government. Then they need this. But as you say, the government job is not that easy to get. You needed to pass exams. You needed to have connections. So it's not like you being a party member, you can guarantee a job in the government. So that is maybe a misunderstanding here, that you say, well, since we have a large percentage of the people in China, they are communist member, that maybe students, that population, they will have a big percentage of, as far as I know, it's not.
Now that's while they're students. What about when they get out in the world? Is that something that they, or does the typical person who gets a job with a multinational makes a?
Oh no, yeah. If they want to, if they put money, earn a big salary, and they will never choose to work in the government. So this is a very different, opposite way of career. And if you choose that way of career, the party membership as actually is not a pro, is not a pro. It's something that's not good. You don't want to be a party member, because some of those multinational companies in China, they don't want people that with a party membership, at their managed level, jobs. So this is something that the college students be very, as I say, be very pragmatic. They know what they want. but of course, there's a percentage of students they want to work in the in the government. They have planned their career as a government. Percentage of students they want to work in the in the government. They have planned their career as a government officials, and then in this case for them, a party membership is crucial.
Hmm.
So that will be, yeah, that will be, so if you already a party member, before you leave the, graduate, that's a plus when you try to find a job, at, in government.
Well, and certainly though they have a lot of economic opportunities that
Yes,
out there.
yes.
And one thing about the thing about China that I always find interesting is they, with authoritarian regimes, they often fail to do a good job of things, right? They don't have a lot of people riding herd on them, and they fail. China seems to manage things and get things done better. I have a vision that their military won't be quite as bad as the Russian military turned out to be if it ever has to fight anyone. Just because I think they do have an interesting mix of authoritarian, but also pragmatic. There's a certain higher, I mean, the bar isn't too high here. I don't want to make too big deal of it, but compared to some of the feckless authoritarian regimes out there, I'm always kind of like China makes things work differently than other ones. And so I don't know if you share that impression at all, but they seem to make things work fairly well. The question is if they stop making it work. Well, that'll be the problem, I suppose.
Yeah, see, I published a book, why communist China isn't collapsing in 2019, and we talked about that before. Well, there is a difference. Say 2018, from 1990 to the first 10 years of 21st century. That is a very good timing for a good period for Chinese communist rule that we call it soft authoritarianism. They are authoritarian states, but they do have some features that borrow from democratic system. They have for example, they have a village election system. They can vote their leaders in a village, and they actually create several channels for people to communicate with the government. And so there is we so-called soft authoritarianism. That is actually Professor.
What was that last bit? I missed it.
Soft authoritarianism.
Soft authoritarianism.
Yeah,
Yes.
soft authoritarianism. So this is actually
yes.
soft authoritarianism. So this is actually Dr. David Shampo in his book China's Future talked about that this soft authoritarianism is close to we call semi-democracy. So they actually offer some of those features that they borrow from a democratic system that allow people to vent their dissatisfaction, allow people to communicate their dissatisfaction. So this is good. So this is how China can manage. On the one hand, they create those rapid economic development. On the other hand, they try to calm people by solving the problem, some of those problems, and they will target some public most concerned issues like corruption. In 2015, Xi administration they began to tackle down the corruption problem. Although some people say this is this is like another political purge, but in reality they did tackle, they did pull down some, punish some those people, their corrupted officials. So this is the real thing that the PPCCP is doing that can satisfy the people. They seeing that those corruption, they're being punished, they're being pursued. So that is we call soft authoritarianism. And what we concern is what's next, because it turns out along with the COVID-19 pandemic, China's the whole country is shut down, and the government actually has a really stricter control over the society, over the whole country. So we don't. Okay. Maybe China is shifting from a soft authoritarianism towards a hard authoritarianism, and that's not good. So if they close all those channels that allow people to communicate, that's bad. Okay, that's bad. That's the possibility that we see this 10% of the students, those student activists, those students that are in favor of democracy, that could trigger another movement.
So, probably I just need to get your book and read it so I can ask intelligent questions, not the crap I've been giving out today. And that might be a whole nother podcast to talk about in the future. But I think we're at a great spot because I think you just laid out, we're at that point. Is it going to be, soft authoritarianism or hard? And going to be soft authoritarianism or hard, and I think Xi Jinping is got a he's kind of ready. He could be willing to consolidate control and harden things for sure, or not. We don't know. So I think we're at a great point to be looking forward, and so I think you've laid out some very interesting questions of what's going to emerge. So I think that's a great place to end it. And so I'm glad I asked you about the communist thing because I need to be set right on these things. So thank you for that. And I think I really appreciate having you on. We went a little long already. See, that's the thing. I'm trying to wrap up, but very fascinating research here. And I look forward to seeing what you get. And like I say, we may want to dig down in your book at some point. But so wrap it up, roll the music. I want to thank everyone for who's listened, for joining the Thinking Out Loud podcast, and very much want to thank Dr. Feng Sun for joining me. Thank you, and everyone have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Bye.